Okay. Hi, my name is Jackson Miller. Today I'll be analyzing a debate that was held on CNBC over the federal $15 minimum wage. Let's meet the debaters. So, Mike Novogratz will be arguing for the wage raise, and Kevin O'Leary will be arguing against. Here's a little bit about Mike. He's an ex-hedge fund manager at Fortress Investment Group. Currently, he's the CEO of Galaxy Investment Partners, which is like investments managing cryptos and such. Graduate of Princeton University. He's a frequent keynote speaker. He's frequently on CNBC. Yeah, he is a multi-billionaire as well. Kevin O'Leary, who you may know from Shark Tank, he is also a billionaire. He's one of the sharks on Shark Tank. He graduated from Ivy Business School. Yeah, you'll see him around a lot. He's a TV personality, owns lots of businesses, major investor. Yeah. Okay, so I will go over to the video.
A living wage versus a minimum wage, because
so like I said earlier, this was held on CNBC, and they brought the two guests on to debate over the topic of the federal $15 minimum wage. This came out in January. This was a very hot topic at the time. It was right before Biden was inaugurated, and the $15 minimum wage was a major part of Biden's presidential campaign. Yeah. So here we go. The first thing that you just heard there, if you were able to hear it quick enough, is Mike speaks on the wage raise as not a minimum wage, but a living wage. You hear that talked about frequently, where the minimum wage should be the hourly wage where people are able to live off it. Currently, they chose $15 because anything below $15, if you're working full time, you'll be below the poverty line. If the minimum wage is under $15, that's why it's $15, and that's why they wanted to be raised, so people won't be living under the poverty line when they're working full time. Here we go.
Living in Alabama and living in New York City are very different, different economies. So that would be my first thought. My second thought is, listen, the bulk of people making less than the minimum wage don't work for small mom and pop businesses. They work for the big box retail stores. 85% of people that work at big box retail make less than the living wage in the county they live in. That's crazy. That's the home.
So here we go. Right away, he's talking about how 80% of people working minimum wage jobs are working at big box retail, so large corporations that aren't small businesses. A lot of people who argue against the wage raise cite how small businesses will be hurt by a wage raise, and he's rebutting that argument, saying that 80% of minimum wage workers work for large corporations that can afford a bump in salaries or a bump in wages for their employees.
Depots of the world. That's the Lowe's of the world. It used to be Walmart until it got so much pressure. It's quick service restaurants, and so these are big chains where people are making lots of money. It's unethical for someone to work a 40-hour week and make, $8 an hour. It just doesn't add up.
So here you go. He says it's unethical for people to work 40 hours a week and only make $8 an hour. So that's $8 is about the current federal minimum wage, and he's talking about how it's unethical to be working full time and only be making $8. And I mean, it really is. With $8, you can't afford any type of good health care for yourselves. You're gonna have to work more than 40 hours to just work. Like, you're gonna have to work 2 jobs or more than 40 hours on that wage, and that's like too much work for a person. And not to mention that you're trying to uphold a family. You could be potentially trying to uphold a family. You have to feed yourself, and there's just a mental toll as well, because you don't have time to care after yourself when you're working so much just to survive.
They're mostly going up, Mike. A lot of those, Target, Walmart, all those places, without any government intervention or marketplace finagling, they've all gone up to, they're paying $15 already, and that's That's organic, and that we're
They've got
in a strong economy. In a strong economy, you're trying to get a bunch of workers, and they can demand that to pay.
But Joe, I think in a lot of ways, Amazon moved its wages, Walmart's moved its wages because of political pressure, because of social and political pressure, because of AOC screaming at.
Okay, so here we go. The moderator butts in and he talks about how large corporations like Amazon and Walmart have already raised their wages, and he cites this due to a healthy economy and a worker's demand for raised wages, and that is true. But Mike rebuts this and says that's more to the political and social pressure that has been put on those large corporations because they're making so much money and they're paying their employees so little, and so that pressure is really what drove them to raise the wages rather than just wanting to pay their employees more to get more employees. Because
Get them and say, how can you not pay any tax and pay your workers so little? How can the government be subsidizing your employees with food stamps, right? It was like $3 billion of food stamps the government pays into Walmart employees who then spend them at Walmart. That just doesn't make sense when Walmart's one of the most profitable companies in the world. It just doesn't.
Kevin?
The market is an amazing thing. The American entrepreneur is a force of nature. And by putting any kind of constraint on their decisions, in terms of battling back from basically an economy that was shut down on them for no fault of their own, is a huge mistake. My whole point is, it's not the time. Now's not the time.
The market hasn't worked.
So Kevin speaks for the first time, and he talks about how right now is not the time to raise the minimum wage, and that overall it'll just hurt the entrepreneur, which is what drives America. And
for 50% of our economy for a long time. And the medicine that, the central bank governors and the treasury chiefs continue to get
hold on.
economy.
50% of the jobs in America come from small businesses. Half the economy is driven by the ones that you just poo-pooed and said no.
So Kevin talks about the statistic that 50% of Americans work for small businesses, which is true. That surprised me to learn. That surprised me when I learned about it. And 99% of American businesses are small businesses, no matter how many employees they have. And so that's definitely something that you have to consider when you're thinking about this wage raise, because it really is such a big part of our economy, the small businesses, and that's what Kevin is ultimately arguing with.
No, it's all about Walmart. No, it isn't. It's all about my businesses that hire 28 people that start and grind it out. Their family businesses in Oklahoma and Tallahassee and Chicago suburbs. They're the ones. They can't afford $15 minimum wages. They're the ones. They're the American entrepreneurs.
So here you go. Kevin gets like a little more vibrant, which isn't something that you necessarily want to see in a debate like this. But yeah. So take that with a grain of salt.
We had our Capitol attacked 2 weeks ago.
Mike talking about how we got our Capitol attacked is kind of an odd thing to put in here. This was right after the January 6th insurrection, but he's going to go on to connect this Capitol attack to how America is divided between the rich up here and the poor down here. So yeah.
This tension in America because,
and he says this tension can be partly relieved with a minimum wage raise.
What does that have to do with the minimum wage?
It has a lot to do with it because we have a huge gap between rich and poor, which continues to get wider every year between Republican and Democrat administration, and it's fraying the social fabric of our country, period. And that's why we have both populist movements on the right and the left.
Why wouldn't you support starting businesses and giving them a tax break for 24 months
and
not buying them by any minimum wage? Why wouldn't you do that? Why couldn't you get behind that?
I would support tax breaks for new businesses, and I would give them a break on the minimum wage for a small period of time.
You're talking.
So here we go. The two commentators are almost discussing a compromise about what we can do in this situation, and Mike agrees with Kevin that they should give a tax break to small businesses, and in my opinion, that would work. if the wage were to raise to uphold the small businesses, and then they go on to talk about how they go on to talk about how they would have they would give small businesses more time to pay the higher wage. I see the problem with that though is that the small businesses won't be able to attract employees if if they're not going to pay the higher wage off the bat, and that can hurt the employmentship of the small businesses versus a big business who would be paying the $15 minimum wage right away.
But that's small businesses. I think the bulk of what I think we need to shift.
But I think the tax breaks is definitely a realistic compromise.
Is how we think about employees in our bigger businesses. Listen, 20 years ago, you used to get a job as a janitor working for a company like Apple, and you'd get health care, and you'd get the college program if there was one. Today, that's all outsourced. And so this drive to have only shareholder value as the only beacon just doesn't work anymore. It's why people are moving to multi-stakeholder capitalism.
Anytime the system goes under stress,
So Mike there talked about how there's a lack of benefits nowadays with large corporations and
There's a financial correction. People point to saying capitalism doesn't work, it's got to be changed. You don't change it. You don't touch it. It is basically working all the time, but it has an element of volatility to it. I don't think putting a new cost in some regions, it could be as high as 25%.
We've always put rules around capitalism.
So that cost that Kevin's talking about and is talking about how if in some regions, if they were to raise the minimum wage, then the cost of living would go up in that region up to 25%. That's probably in like smaller states, like I don't know, Oklahoma, but the cost of living would go up a lot in states like that if the minimum wage are raised, and stuff like that has been tested in Seattle. The minimum wage was raised to $15, and the cost of living did not raise nearly up to 25%. I think it was something like 2 or 3%, and but that is a concern for people arguing against the minimum wage raise.
We don't let children under 12, tie little knots and make rugs anymore because we thought that was unethical. Like, we're allowed to put rules around capitalism. We have from the very beginning.
So, and then Mike rebuts the point that cost of living would raise, that capitalism would be ultimately hurted by a minimum wage raise, by rebutting and saying that you have to put some rules around capitalism to keep ethics and to keep ethics involved, like making child labor laws. He's comparing a minimum wage raise to that.
And so having some rule where we say there's some limited amount of money that we don't want, that it's just unethical to have a guy toil away.
Kevin.
So there you go. The debate concludes there. They don't really come to much of a conclusion, but there's definitely an important discussion about compromise within that debate. And I think that because of how divided the American political system, the only way that we were to get a change like this that would be helpful for so many Americans is through some type of compromise between the left and the right and the arguers for or against the minimum wage raise. Yeah. So here you go. I'm going to bring back to... So here you go. This is the works cited real quick. All right. Thank you for watching.